Greetings, this is I, Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue our discussion on EARTHDAWN. We were talking about talents last time. This time I'm going to talk about skills. Now, skills are non-magical means that anyone, including adepts, but even non-adepts, could use in order to replace effectively what a talent would do. Very oftentimes they mimic the exact same things a talent does. It is also based upon your skill rank plus attribute step to determine the result of it. There are 4 types of skills. There is artistic skills, which is your arts and crafts. There are knowledge skills, which is the information you know about the world, the different things you've learned about. There's general skills, which is most of everything else you can do, anything that mimics a lot of most actions. And then there's language skills, which is both your spoken and written word, understanding various languages. Now, there are many skills which do the exact same thing as talents. Unfortunately, talents are more powerful in general. They usually give you more of a bonus. They're magical based. Skills are the more mundane version of it. Now, you could have technically both of them, and there are adepts that do take both of them, because if there's an area where they cannot use magic, then they have the mundane version of the same ability that they can still use. It gives them options. If you would have both, you'd choose which one to use. Now, the difference between skills and talents is skills do require instructors in order to teach you to them, and it oftentimes takes money. You're going to have to use like some kind of time and funding in order to learn new skills or to advance skills. Oftentimes when you're advancing them, you of course would be using legend points along with it, along with the instructor and the time and money. Oftentimes as starting characters, you of course will have a certain number of set skills built into your character. Now, when you're rolling a skill, you're making a skill test, is what you're effectively doing, which is equivalent to your skill rank added to your attribute step to figure out what your skill step is. You then would, of course, roll your skill step, combining these 2 numbers together. Traditionally, knowledge skills are based upon perception, artistic skills are based upon charisma, and general skills it will mention in the description which attribute is associated to. There are some of these tests that, like a talent, replace another type of test that you'll be rolling on your character. Now let's talk about defaulting, because defaulting is something that a lot of skills can do. It will mention under the skill specifically if you can default that skill. What it would mean is if I have no ranks in that skill, I could possibly still roll it. I'd be able to roll my attribute instead of just rolling my attribute plus skill. It means I can still use this. This is more of an optional rule that you can look into that would say, like, you would know, slashing with a sword. You probably can do that even if you're not trained at it at all, have no skill in it or any kind of talent ability. I can still do this. I can't do it well, but I can still do that. And that is where the defaulting option comes in, if you're using the defaulting skill options. Now, there is some disadvantage for defaulting. First off, it would increase whatever the result level would be. You'd have to get 1 higher to a maximum of extraordinary. Now, if there's any kind of numerical results, like a kind of range or duration based upon the skill, and you're defaulting it, treat it as 1. You're treating it as the minimum possible for the numbers on there. Now, adepts do have another ability that it has to do with defaulting here. At certain circles, they gain the ability to spend karma on any kind of skill they default. So at the point in time that they reach this circle, they have the option of then spending a karma point and adding it in. You'd still raise the difficulty as normal for anything defaulting. It's just they would get that extra karma bonus of the karma point they are spending. When you're talking about replacing a certain type of test with a skill test, then you treat it the exact same way that you'd replace it with a talent test, the exact same kind of basic rules. Now, artisan skills have a wide variety of uses, but aren't used very often. One of the easiest ways, of course, for greeting someone when you come to a new town, especially one that's more on the frontier where they would have to worry about horrors, you would effectively make a small test of some kind of artistics, traditionally difficulty 5, and you'd show off your artistic skills and both say, I'm not tainted by horror. On the other hand, you could also use it to impress someone when you first meet them. You could use your artistic skills and go against their social defense to sort of show off yourself to them. That's the other way that you can generally use it. Now, knowledge test comes important because we were talking about you can default on a knowledge test too. We were talking about them. And the thing is, the more you get on it, the higher the result is. The actually more important it is, because generally speaking, you have a certain level on a knowledge skill that when you reach it, you know some basic amounts of information, and the more you get, the more roll you get, the more you know about them. So in fact, it actually is pretty important to get very high on knowledge as in comparison to the rest, where you might just want to at least succeed at it. Now you do have an option when based around knowledge skills of using them in place of another skill. Let's say I have a skill in some kind of skill that's a general skill, and perhaps that I have to know something that's based around a knowledge based around that skill. Then at GM's discretion, I could roll that as my knowledge because I'm trained in this skill to a certain degree, so I probably know some things about it, and I would add my perception to that in that case too, so that I would then get the correct inferences and correct remembrance of information based around this, what I'm trained at, in order to come up with a proper deduction based upon what I'm thinking about. Now, knowledges actually have two uses. The first use is to have your game master reveal knowledge to you as it's required as part of the storyline, but it's also helped to define the background and characteristics of your actual character. And as I said, the more successful you are at it, the more you know. You might be just looking for one single fact, and then you have a certain target difficulty, or you could be trying to start that base difficulty and get pretty high in order to see what you totally know about this fact, or this item, or whatever you're thinking about. As I said, there are two different versions of it. There's just the basic, I need to know something, where you'd have a set DC, or the one where I have a set DC to know the basic information and get higher. There are some charts in the book. The first one talks about how well you've gotten over it, what kind of information you're going to get. Also, another one is when you're choosing whatever knowledge you're going to be rolling appropriate to the situation, the GM will determine how closely relevant it is. That will help determine that whatever knowledge I'm using, that I'm attempting my check with, that if it's not quite related to whatever I'm trying to think about, then I'm not going to draw the correct conclusions, because the knowledge skills aren't about everything. It's about remembering the proper things and then drawing the proper conclusions about the situation and about what you can remember to infer what's going on in a situation. So it does have this limitations to the way that you're gaining information and inferring a conclusion. You could, of course, pick up like irrelevant or obscure information with this, and you have to remember, knowledge is not an action, it's knowing something, it's information. Now, general skills, of course, are just basic skills that you'd be using, and they oftentimes mimic other actions or talents. Now, language skills are the ability to speak languages, but also to write and communicate with them. When you're trying to learn a new language, it will take you at least a month, and you'll have to have some kind of trainer that's going to teach you over the course of that month. At the end of it, you're going to make a test with a difficulty dependent on the type of language you're attempting to learn, and if you succeed at it, you've learned the language. If you fail, you have to continue to study. Now, then we get into the meat of the skills which are in the book. They list all the skills that you're pretty much going to be looking at. It lists them alphabetically. It gives certain information. It gives what your skill step is going to be, rank plus the attribute that you're going to be using. It tells you if you can default at it. It tells you what kind of action it's going to be to use this skill. And much like talents, if it has a strain to it, it will tell you what that strain is. So just like talents, you can have strain upon skills. So that's it for today. I went over skills in EARTHDAWN, and I talked about them. They're oftentimes very similar to talents, can take the same role, but they are non-magical, and so anybody can really have them, and that represents what the non-adepts are going to be taking. In the next episode, I'm going to move into more magical-based things and talking about that. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I've left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe for the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can check out my Patreon, link to the description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.